Chapter 26:12. Yiqing Luo crossed her arms as she leaned into Dmo Xian's arms, squinting her eyes slightly towards the Miao father and daughter pair's low-level tricks. She really couldn't muster up any interest. But Miao Yixiong was right about one thing. Dmo Xian's actions really sounded like a muddle-headed and tyrannical ruler just to win a beauty's smile. She was Dmo Xian's woman, which also represented Dmo Xian's foresight and taste. No matter how Dmo Xian protected her, she could not embarrass Dmo Xian. Her slender brows rose slightly as she patted the hand on her waist lightly. There was no need for any words. Their tacit understanding made Dmo Xian directly let go of her hand. Yiqing Luo's eyes were filled with smiles as she comforted the man behind her. Following that, she patted the pavilion's railing and flipped herself up. A ball of fiery figure instantly landed on the opposite side of the pavilion, in front of Miao Yixiong. Miao Yixiong was suddenly approached by the young lady as he staggered a few steps back. Yiqing Luo didn't even take a look at Miao Yixiong as she smiled sweetly at Miao Rongrong. "Eldest Miss Miao thinks that I pushed you?" The wet pond water dripped onto the ground. Miao Rongrong shivered as she leaned into Miao Yixiong's arms. Her face was filled with fear and terror. This wasn't an act. It was Miao Rongrong's real emotions. She had not expected the overlord to have such deep feelings for this slut, totally not minding the infamy to destroy the Miao Gu family. If her and her father's plan failed, the Miao Gu family would really cease to exist. She absolutely could not let the Miao Gu family be destroyed. She was the Miao Gu tribe's sacred lady, the future sacred lady of the Miao Gu tribe. She still had to ascend to the upper realm through the position of sacred lady. She still had a beautiful future. This plan could only succeed and absolutely could not fail. Miao Rongrong pursed her lips as she replied in a trembling voice, "Sorry Miss Yi, I've misunderstood." Yiqing Luo's lips curled. "Didn't you swear earlier that I pushed you and wanted to kill you? Why did you misunderstand again?" Miao Rongrong lowered her head even more. "I was wrong. Miss Yi, please forgive me." Yiqing Luo smiled evilly. It's good that you know you're in the wrong, but there's no need to talk about forgiveness, because from the beginning till the end, I've only treated you as a joke." "Yes, I am a joke. So Miss Yi, I beg you, let me go. Let the Miao Gu clan go." Miao Rongrong choked with sobs and couldn't speak. Her entire body was trembling from fear. Miao Rongrong's plea, on the contrary, it made Yiqing Luo appear even more arrogant and despotic. Especially those who came later, when they saw this scene. No matter what, she felt that Yiqing Luo was forcing Miao Rongrong to admit that Miao Rongrong falling into the water had nothing to do with her. Yiqing Luo naturally guessed everyone's thoughts. She rubbed her hands disapprovingly as she tilted her head and gave an innocent smile. "Eldest young Miss Miao, I only wanted to tell you one thing. Towards those scums who tried to seduce my man and frame me, if I want to take action, I will absolutely not use such a low IQ action to humiliate myself." Her words paused as she asked smilingly, "Make a guess, what will I do?" Miao Rongrong naturally knew that Yiqing Luo's question was definitely not something good. But before Miao Rongrong had the chance to reply, she felt her collar being yanked by someone fiercely. Miao Yixiong's coat which she was wearing slid onto the ground. Chapter 26:13. Miao Rongrong realized that her current situation was no different from not wearing any clothes at all. Especially the water droplets that were still dripping from her body. Instead, there was a different kind of temptation. There were already quite a number of men who stared at her body with malicious intentions. Their gazes were like fire, as though they had seen through those few layers of wet clothes, seeing through everything about her. She screamed and tried to cover herself. But before she could even raise her hand, bam! A slap landed on Miao Rongrong's face. This slap was full of strength. After a while, Miao Rongrong's face was already red and swollen. This slap also made Miao Rongrong dazed, even forgetting to cover herself up. The surrounding gasps of cold air made Miao Rongrong regain some of her rationality. Before she could open her mouth, Miao Rongrong felt a sharp pain coming from her chest. She was kicked by someone. His entire body was sent flying by a powerful impact. Miao Rongrong fell into the pool with a plop sound, splashing countless of water. Miao Rongrong was choked by the water and struggled to get out of the water. But after being tugged by Yi Qing Luo, her 4 limbs had no strength at all. Gulp gulp. She wanted to ask for help, but was only poured into big mouthfuls of water. Miao Rongrong could almost feel that her consciousness was gradually drifting away. Rongrong. Miao Yixiong's eyes widened as he rushed to the side of the pool, looking at his daughter who had stopped struggling in the water. His face was ashen. Looking around, those few who had saved Miao Rongrong once had no intention of going into the water to save her. He clenched his teeth and jumped into the water himself, carrying Miao Rongrong to the shore. Just as they were about to go ashore, a light voice was heard from the other end of the pavilion. Since Miao Yixiong and eldest young Miss Miao love to move around underwater, I shall satisfy the both of you, father and daughter, to soak in the water for 4 hours. Miao Yixiong's action of going ashore paused. Miao Rongrong, who was leaning on his shoulder, was so shocked that she spat out a mouthful of water. Looking at the 2 people in the water, Yi Qing Luo's face didn't have a single trace of warmth, and her charming eyes were so cold that it felt icy cold. If it was me, I would do this, do you know? She dusted off her hands, then pulled out a handkerchief to wipe her hands. Then, she threw the handkerchief at Miao Yixiong's face. With a leap, she returned back into Dmo Xian's arms. She leaned on Dmo Xian, her long and narrow eyes flashed with a biting cold glint. Miao Yixiong, Miao Rongrong, don't play with this kind of imbecile plaything in front of me, otherwise, the next time, Xian's words will become reality. She sneered as she pulled Dmo Xian's hand and turned to leave. Xian, let's go back to the courtyard. Just standing here, I feel that we're especially degrading. Dmo Xian nodded slightly as he walked side by side with Yi Qing Luo and left the back garden. When Yin Qinghao hurried over, Dmo Xian and Yi Qing Luo had long left. The 2 people soaking in the water had ashen complexions and were trembling non-stop. The surrounding people were standing by the side of the pool, pointing and gossiping, as though they were ridiculing something. Yin Qinghao immediately walked over and called for this person to go down and fish out the Miao father and daughter duo. The person by the shore immediately stopped him. Sect Master Yin, the overlord had personally instructed to let this father and daughter duo soak in the water for 4 hours before they can come out. Yin Qinghao was stunned as he took a look at the 2 people in the pool. Miao Yixiong had to carry Miao Rongrong, who was already weak and powerless, and to stabilize his body in the water, so his face had long turned pale. Hearing the explanation from the person by the shore, his expression was getting darker and darker. Chapter 26:14. 4 hours. Yin Qinghao muttered softly as he raised his eyes and looked at Miao Yixiong. Since it's the overlord's instructions, then I'll have to trouble Miao Clan's clan leader. Miao Yixiong was so angry that he gritted his teeth as his eyes turned scarlet red. The pond water soaked his entire body, making him look extremely disheveled and unbearable. His heart was filled with anger. But he maintained a helpless expression as he shot a gentle glance at Miao Rongrong, who was leaning on his shoulder. It's Rongrong who made Miss Yi unhappy, and Miss Yi wants to punish Rongrong, so it's what Rongrong deserves. He didn't mention a single word about Dmo Xian. But he attributed the reason why they were reduced to this state, soaking in the pond, to Yi Qing Luo. Those who were watching earlier were filled with disdain. Although they didn't know Yi Luo well, but from the birthday banquet, they could tell. This lady's character would absolutely disdain to do such a thing like pushing someone into the water secretly. If she wanted to do it, it would be like what she did earlier, directly kicking him into the pond. Thinking of Miao Rongrong's sweet crying look when she saw Dmo Xian. Anyone with brains knew clearly. This was obviously Miao Rongrong, who intentionally fell into the water to frame Yi Luo. They had even fallen into the Meow father and daughter duo's trap. And even helped the father and daughter duo to speak up. And almost offended the overlord. Meow Ishiong was still trying to push everything onto Yi Luo. But there were some who heard the commotion and rushed over. Upon hearing Meow Ishiong's words, they followed his lead and misunderstood Yi Qing Luo. Yi Qing Luo held on to Dmo Xian's arm as they walked back to the courtyard. The design of Elation Sec's back garden was extremely elegant. The trees on both sides of the path were lush and lush. Not too far away was a flower bed which had been meticulously trimmed by the gardener, and every part was extremely pleasing to the eye. I wasn't around. Why did you run over to meet the father and daughter duo alone? Dmo Xian glanced sideways and his peach blossom eyes were deeply fixated on the young lady beside him, his brows filled with gentleness. Yi Qing Luo's pink lips curled into a sweet smile as she raised her head and rested her chin on his arm. When you were in the upper realm, do you still remember the memory of the doppelganger who was by my side? I remember. Dmo Xian chuckled lightly. Mo Yao's pupils reflected the young lady's disguised face. Clearly, it was a far cry from her gorgeous face. But, as long as it was her. Even he was amazed. He would have the urge to hug the girl tightly and carry her into the room. How could Yi Qing Luo not see through the man's naked gaze? She rolled her eyes and raised her hand to cover his eyes, which were filled with emotion. The main reason I came to the back garden was because I felt the summoning of the other part of the black tortoise's soul. Black tortoise. Dmo Xian murmured. Yi Qing Luo could feel the eyes under her palm, the man's overly long eyelashes, sweeping past her palm. Following that, Dmo Xian raised his hand and gently held the young lady's little hand. You can't sense it now? Yi Qing Luo shook her head. The black tortoise's presence has disappeared. After arriving at the back garden, the intense reaction within the profound jade heart had already gradually dissipated. Especially when Miao Rongrong was about to fall into the water to frame her. All the senses had completely disappeared. Otherwise she would have pulled Dmo Xian along to accompany her to search for the other part of the black tortoise's soul. Chapter 26:15. Yi Qing Luo nodded. Confirm the location. Black tortoise's soul will definitely be collected. If I'm not around, even if you sense black tortoise's soul, don't be alone with the Meow father and daughter. Dmo Xian's hand followed her head and landed on her bare face. His slender fingers curled up slightly, pinching the flesh on her cheek, although the Meow family is nothing to be afraid of, but it is after all a place that has been around for nearly 1,000 years, and mainly uses venomous spells. You don't know much about venomous spells, so it's best to be careful. I know. Yi Qing Luo didn't want to be outdone as she tiptoed and pinched his face. These father and daughter have been jumping in front of me for the past 2 days, I can roughly guess their motive. Good that you know, don't make me worry. Dmo Xian's peach blossom eyes were filled with gentleness as he gently embraced her petite body, his thin lips imprinted on her hair. Feeling the man's deep concern and pampering, Yi Qing Luo's smile became sweeter as her arms circled around his neck, pulling him closer to her. Following that, her pink lips landed a light kiss on his chin. After today's commotion, they won't have the energy to find trouble with us for the next few days, don't worry. Yi Qing Luo smiled. Just as Dmo Xian was being teased by this kiss of hers, he wanted to turn this light kiss into a passionate kiss. Yi Qing Luo had already moved away. Like a butterfly, she quickly jogged forward, and even turned her head back, revealing a crafty smile at him. Showing the delicateness that a girl should have. Dmo Xian stood behind, looking at his empty arm. Then looking at the young lady who was smiling like a flower. A pair of bold peach blossom eyes, filled with pampering. That cold and hard face of peerless elegance also added a bit of gentleness. His lips carried a joyful smile, his eyes were focused, as if in his heart, there was only her and only her. There were people passing by one after another. When they saw this scene, a surge of envy and yearning arose in their hearts. Seeing the overlord, they were extremely excited. But such a beautiful atmosphere, they couldn't bear to disturb, nor did they dare to disturb. Another 3 days went by. These 3 days, the Miao father and daughter indeed had no energy to find trouble with Yiqing Luo. Perhaps it was because of Dmo Xian. It was about the future garden. No one mentioned it again. No one intentionally mentioned the Miao father and daughter duo in front of Yiqing Luo. Apart from the various forces that would occasionally come to their courtyard in an attempt to establish a relationship with them, it was rather peaceful. And on this 4th day, before the sky had even turned bright, a clamor was heard outside Yiqing Luo and the others' courtyard. Yiqing Luo woke up from Dmo Xian's arms and yawned tiredly. With his keen senses, he could hear Butler Yin's deliberately lowered voice from outside the courtyard. He seemed to be arguing with someone. Dmo Xian's large palm covered her eyes. You must be exhausted last night. Sleep a little more, I'll go out to take a look. I'm fine, it seems to be housekeeper Yin's voice, something might have happened. Yiqing Luo propped up her weak limbs and flipped her messy hair. Her waist suddenly tightened, and the man's hoarse voice, which was sober in the middle of the night, rang in her ears. Are you all right? Does that mean I didn't work hard enough last night? Yiqing Luo's cheeks flushed red as her little hands pushed away his chest. Stop being so frivolous. Quickly put on your clothes and go out to take a look. Men's clothes were easy to wear. Especially Dmo Xian. His arms stretched out. His legs got off the bed. Chapter 26:16. I'll go take a look. Dmo Xian scooped up the young lady and planted a kiss on her lips before he turned and walked out of the room. After Yiqing Luo was dressed, she followed the voice and walked out of the courtyard. She heard a man's voice filled with anger. Overlord, although my Miao Gu family doesn't close your palace, but we are after all a 1,000-year-old family. You don't differentiate between right and wrong, using the annihilation of the Miao Gu family to threaten me. I'm not convinced. This voice, it wasn't unfamiliar. When Yiqing Luo heard this, she knew that this man was the son of the second master of the Miao Gu family, Miao Jingwei, who had blocked the attack for Xiao Lingling at the Peach Blossom restaurant. It was probably not even 4 in the morning. He came to her courtyard at this hour, just to create a ruckus over Miao Rongrong's matter. Young Master Miao. Housekeeper Yin was shocked by Miao Jingwei's bold words and immediately raised his voice to remind Miao Jingwei. However, Miao Jingwei didn't have any intention to retreat. Rongrong's life is in danger. No matter what, I hope Miss Yi can make a trip to see Rongrong, at least. Whatever she did to Rongrong, she must resolve it. Around them, there were also a few people discussing in low voices. Apparently, they were attracted by Miao Jingwei's actions. It was not even morning yet. The spacious Joy sect seemed extremely empty and desolate. Miao Jingwei's sonorous and unyielding voice fell. Only those onlookers who were attracted by the commotion could be heard. Just as this strange atmosphere that sent chills down one's spine was about to suffocate the crowd, she then heard the noble and elegant man's thin lips spit out a sentence indifferently. So what if you don't accept it? Whether the Miao Gu family exists or not, it doesn't matter to me. Overlord. Miao Jingwei's eyes turned red from Dmo Xian's words. He had already knelt here. And had already clashed with Dmo Xian. If this matter wasn't settled properly, he would die sooner or later. He clenched his fists tightly and suppressed his fear towards Dmo Xian as he lowered his head, not daring to look at Dmo Xian. Obviously, Dmo Xian didn't look much older than him. But unfortunately, Dmo Xian just stood there. It was an oppressive feeling. It was so heavy that even breathing became extremely difficult for him. Scram. Spitting out those cold words, Dmo Xian couldn't even be bothered to look at him as he turned around to return to the courtyard. Butler Yin immediately bent down to pull Miao Jingwei away. But Miao Jingwei didn't know where the courage came from as he suddenly dashed towards Dmo Xian, wanting to hug Dmo Xian's leg. Overlord. I beg you to let Miss Yi see Rongrong. Only Miss Yi can save Rongrong. I beg you. But, he had yet to get close to Dmo Xian. A whirlwind suddenly blew in front of him. Miao Jingwei felt as if his body had been pushed by some kind of power, and he was sent flying backwards. He fell heavily to the ground and rolled on the ground in pain. The Overlord hates it when people get close to him. Young Master Miao, please leave with me. Butler Yin frowned and tried to persuade him. Miao Jingwei screamed in pain. His screams were extremely loud in the wee hours of the morning. Yiqing Luo had just walked to the courtyard entrance when she saw this scene. Looking at Miao Jingwei, who was rolling on the ground like a madman and throwing a tantrum, Yiqing Luo couldn't help but burst out laughing. This Miao family's people were really unscrupulous, throwing a tantrum and using shameless methods. Chapter 26:17. The first thing he saw was a young lady dressed in a fiery red long robe as she walked over slowly. Perhaps she had just woken up and hadn't had the time to tidy herself up. The young lady's long black hair was scattered over her shoulders. The early morning breeze was slightly chilly and carried a trace of moisture as it blew her hair behind her back. The fiery red dress was fluttering in the wind like a fluttering flame, bobbing up and down. Under the two lanterns hanging above the courtyard door, the young lady's beautiful face was filled with an inexplicable charm. Miao Jingwei stared at the young lady as she walked over, and for a moment, he even forgot about rolling on the ground. Suddenly, Miao Jingwei shuddered. An inexplicable chill which made one's scalp go numb surged into his heart. His eyes flashed as he looked towards Dmo Xian. He saw that originally noble, aloof and disdainful man was looking at him with a smile which didn't look like a smile. That gaze was absolutely his lifetime's nightmare. Was because he stared at Yi Luo. So, the Overlord was jealous? How much did he pamper and love Yi Luo? So he didn't even allow another man to look at Yi Luo? Miao Jingwei's heart suddenly surged with an uneasy premonition. Second young Master Miao. Yiqing Luo's clear and melodious voice had an intentional teasing tone. Since when did second young Master Miao become a trickster, specially running over to my courtyard to roll on the ground? She raised her head and looked at Dmo Xian. Xian, do you think I should tip second young Master Miao some money? The young lady had just opened her mouth. Dmo Xian had already stretched out his hand. Yiqing Luo unpretentiously placed her hand into Dmo Xian's hand. The next moment, she was dragged into Dmo Xian's arms. The man's warm embrace instantly eroded the coolness on her body. She raised her head and placed her chin on the man's chest, revealing a sweet smile. My money is your money. If you want a tip, it's up to you. Dmo Xian's voice was gentle, as though the person who was emitting a chill earlier wasn't him. Miao Jingwei regained his senses from the shock. Hearing their conversation, he suddenly felt a burst of embarrassment. Those who were watching the show couldn't help but burst out laughing. Miao Jingwei's actions just now were indeed like those street performers who perform tricks. Miss Yi, you've finally come. Miao Jingwei tried his best to ignore those ridiculing gazes, and according to his own plan, he knelt down in front of Yiqing Luo. As long as their plan succeeded, the humiliation he had suffered today would disappear from this world forever. Everyone who had seen what had happened tonight would disappear. This thought made Miao Jingwei even more determined as he knelt down and moved towards Yiqing Luo's feet. Miss Yi, I beg you. Go and save Rongrong. She is our Miao tribe's future sacred maiden, our future hope. She cannot die. She cannot die. Yiqing Luo's brows rose as she smirked. Miao Rongrong is going to die. He sounded as if Miao Rongrong's death was nothing out of the ordinary. Miao Jingwei clenched his fists tightly as he kowtowed on the ground. 3 days ago, Rongrong had offended Miss Yi and was punished by Miss Yi to soak in the pond for 4 hours. Rongrong's body, originally because of Miss Yi, is extremely weak, and after soaking in the pond for 4 hours, she can't take it. Can't take it. One by one, the heavy kowtowing sounds were extremely loud. Not long later, the ground had turned red. Yiqing Luo's brows rose as she had no intention to stop him. Chapter 26:18. Then why did he continue to kowtow? Yiqing Luo put on a curious look as she asked. Miao Jingwei almost spat out a mouthful of blood. Following that, he heard Yiqing Luo clicking her tongue as she continued, surely he wouldn't want to kowtow to his death in front of us, then let us be the scapegoat, right? Miao Jingwei coughed hard. The blood oozing out of his forehead made him dizzy. His body swayed and fell to the ground with a thud. Miss Yi, please save Rongrong, only you can save her. After saying this, Miao Jingwei could no longer stand the dizziness in his head and completely fainted. Yiqing Luo squinted her eyes slightly as she stared at Miao Jingwei's deathly pale face, as her brows creased slightly. We really have to take the blame this time. Dmo Xian tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. If I kill him, no one would dare to say a word, but... Miao Rongrong, do you want him dead? Yiqing Luo's motive for coming to Northern Tide Continent was to let the Miao Gu family's people suppress Long Yunzhan's venom. If Miao Rongrong died, could it be that he had to bring Miao Yixiong to the West Continent? As for the candidate to suppress the parasite poison for Zhan, I have a better choice. Yiqing Luo mysteriously hooked her lips, but... For now, before we are certain, Miao Rongrong cannot die for the time being. Then, I'll accompany you over. Dmo Xian didn't probe further as he respected Yiqing Luo's choice. Yiqing Luo shot a glance at Miao Jingwei as her charming eyes flashed past a dark and gloomy glint. I'm afraid it's a trap. Miao Jingwei came to her courtyard and made such a big fuss. He definitely had ulterior motives. Was Miao Rongrong's life really in danger, or was it just an excuse to lure her over? This point needed to be verified. I'm here. Dmo Xian gently rubbed her head, his thin lips curving into a shallow arc. The smile on Yiqing Luo's face grew thicker and warmer. With Xian around, even if there was a trap, it would be easily solved. Yiqing Luo and Dmo Xian arrived at the courtyard where the Miao Gu family and the others were staying. This courtyard, as compared to Yiqing Luo and the others' courtyard, had an obvious difference. When he stepped into the courtyard, he did not hear any signs of life. Yiqing Luo released her perception and other than the master bedroom, there was no one else in the entire courtyard. She raised her eyebrows in surprise. There's no trap. Dmo Xian's large palm covered her head, his gaze slightly sunk. In terms of profound strength, Miao Yixiong is not as good as you. Arranging an assassin is not realistic. So... Yiqing Luo blinked her eyes in realization. What are their specialties? Dmo Xian followed up. Voodoo. Yiqing Luo laughed. I wonder if Miao Rongrong will still be able to poison us when the poison acts up. The two of them went straight to Miao Rongrong's room. Miao Yixiong's hoarse voice could be heard as he approached. Rongrong. My hopes are all on you, you must not die. If you die, the Miao tribe will be finished. What responded to him was a barely audible cough. Didn't Yi Luo say that she needs you to help her get rid of the curse? She won't let you die. Hang in there, Jingwei will bring Yi Luo here soon. You won't die. You are the future holy maiden of the Miao tribe. Miao Yixiong was still muttering something in a low voice. As though he hadn't noticed that someone was approaching from behind. Suddenly, Miao Rongrong, who was lying on the bed, started to twitch violently. Following that extremely pale face became twisted and sinister. Her body also started to bend. Chapter 26:19. This was the symptom of the poison acting up. Miao Yixiong's face was filled with anxiety as he held Miao Rongrong's hand. Because of the intense pain all over his body, as if thousands of sharp blades were cutting his body viciously. It was the high fever that caused him to lose consciousness. Miao Rongrong used all her strength to hold on tightly to Miao Yixiong's hand. Miao Yixiong's face twitched. He didn't struggle as he allowed Miao Rongrong to hold his hand. His voice was taut as he endured the pain as he spoke. Rongrong, hold on, the guards will bring Miss Yi over soon and the antidote will be here soon. Bear with it. In the depths of his drooping eyelids, there was a sinister look. But Miao Rongrong couldn't hear his voice. Because of the pain, her twitching body was stiff like a devil, extremely terrifying. Miao Yixiong couldn't stand the pain as he used all his strength to struggle free from Miao Rongrong's hand and turned around. "I'll go take a look at the guards now, Rongrong, you." When he turned around and saw the two people behind him, his expression changed abruptly. His eyes widened as he went wild with joy. Overlord. "Miss Yi, you're here." He seemed to be excited as his entire body was trembling as his eyes stared straight at the two people in front of him, unable to suppress his excitement and joy. Yi Qing Luo frowned slightly. Miao Yixiong's performance was too exaggerated. So exaggerated that she started to suspect Miao Yixiong. Or perhaps, if Miao Yixiong was really as concerned about Miao Rongrong as he had shown. His first reaction when he saw them should be to beg her to cure Miao Rongrong. Instead of standing here, looking at them in ecstasy. As though he had completely forgotten that his heartache daughter was still suffering. Dmo Xian slightly tightened his grip on Yi Qing Luo as his gaze went past Miao Yixiong and landed on Miao Rongrong. Miao Yixiong finally reacted as he rushed towards Yi Qing Luo. "Miss Yi, please save Rongrong, her antidote. Her antidote has already been taken. Please give her the antidote." He was just about to pounce forward. But before he could get within 3 steps of Yi Qing Luo, a purple light flashed past his eyes. A powerful profound energy blocked his footsteps. Dmo Xian's purple robe fluttered in the wind as he stared coldly at Miao Yixiong. Miao Yixiong felt a chill run down his spine and did not dare to take another step forward. Miao Rongrong is not dead yet. Yi Qing Luo smiled as she looked at the person on the bed who was in so much pain that his face was contorted. "Why did Leader Miao think that I would give her the antidote?" Her words had just ended when Yi Qing Luo looked at Miao Rongrong's eyes, as it flashed slightly. Her little hand unknowingly tugged at Dmo Xian's robe at his waist. He lowered his eyes. She looked up. Their eyes met, transmitting a message. If he wasn't mistaken, just now, when she was teasing Miao Rongrong about not dying, Miao Rongrong's curled-up fingers suddenly seemed to gain strength as she tightly clenched them into fists. Dmo Xian nodded his head slightly. At this moment, Miao Yixiong suddenly knelt in front of the two of them, his face full of guilt and pleading. He looked very much like a father who would disregard his pride and dignity for the sake of his daughter. "Miss Yi, don't you need Rongrong to do something for you? As long as you're willing to save her, as long as she's alive. I promise you as the Miao clan leader, to let Rongrong help you. To the best of my ability." Heh. Chapter 26-20. Yi Qing Luo's smile gradually deepened as her long and narrow charming eyes were seductive. "I've given her a chance, but she insisted on choosing this path. To make herself suffer. I'm so kind-hearted, so naturally I'll help her pursue the path of suffering." With that, she raised her hand and rubbed her chin. She smiled in admiration. Now, she should have found the pain she was pursuing. "Miss Yi, Rongrong knows she's wrong. She shouldn't have acted on her own and shouldn't have disobeyed you. I promise, she won't go against Miss Yi again." Miao Yixiong humbled himself and pleaded sincerely. The person on the bed screamed in pain at the right time. His voice was as hoarse as a sawtooth, and he could only let out an extremely faint scream. It was as if he had shouted himself hoarse and exhausted all his strength. Miao Yixiong's heart ached even more as he pleaded for mercy. However, the two audience members were not very interested in his performance. Yi Qing Luo only stared at Miao Rongrong, looking at Miao Rongrong's painful and distorted moans, her face which was flushed red from the high fever, as her heart was in a dilemma. Should he save him or not? Although Yi Qing Luo wasn't sure if Miao Rongrong's poison had really acted up. However, this high fever was real. In addition, Miao Rongrong had taken the antidote from her. According to the time, Miao Rongrong had indeed finished it. If he didn't save them, even if it was a fake poison relapse, Miao Rongrong would also die tomorrow. Her intuition told her that she could choose to believe the person she guessed. But, before she had concrete evidence to confirm her intuition, she did not dare to use Long Yunjian's life as a wager. If he followed his intuition and allowed Miao Rongrong to die, and her intuition was wrong. Among the people of the Miaogu clan, who else could help Long Yunjian suppress the gu poison? Miao Yixiong? He was afraid that this Miao Yixiong would be harder to control than Miao Rongrong. Just as she was thinking, she felt an itch on her waist. She raised her eyes in resentment and glared at Dmo Xian. Dmo Xian's thin lips curled up slightly as his shimmering peach blossom eyes blinked devilishly at her. Yiqing Luo's eyes lit up. That's right. They could first see what the father and daughter were up to. Then, he would seize the opportunity to ruin all of their plans. When all hope was lost. If the Miao father and daughter wanted to survive, they could only obediently follow her wishes. Yiqing Luo lowered her eyes and looked at Miao Yixiong, who was still kneeling on the ground, pleading for mercy for Miao Rongrong. Her crafty eyes flashed a cold arc. Miao Yixiong, how can I believe your words? After all, Miao Rongrong lied to me once. Naturally, there will be a second time, a third time. I can swear on the most venomous curse of the Miao Miao tribe. Miao Yixiong saw Yiqing Luo showing signs of loosening up and immediately replied agitatedly. Yiqing Luo raised her brows, then. I will cure Miao Rongrong of the poison. Before Miao Rongrong's task is completed, she can only be used by me. You don't have any objections, right? No, no. Miao Yixiong was very decisive. Yiqing Luo nodded her head in satisfaction, and immediately walked towards Miao Rongrong. She didn't miss it. The moment she lifted her foot. Miao Yixiong's eyes were filled with uncontrollable excitement and hostility. The corners of her lips curled up, but she didn't seem to mind. With Ah Xian by her side, she could leave her back to Ah Xian without reservation. She believed in Ah Xian's ability. Her feet stopped by Miao Rongrong's bedside. Chapter 26-21. Her fingers were about a fist's distance away from Miao Rongrong. Behind her, she felt the change and fluctuation of the airflow. She didn't turn back. Instead, her lips curled into an evil smile, with a hint of ridicule. Swoosh, there was an extremely faint sound of something slicing through the air. Following that, was Miao Yixiong's painful groan. She frowned slightly. She did not sense the sense of danger that was surging towards her back as she had imagined. Just as she was about to turn back, her ears twitched. That hand which was about to touch Miao Rongrong suddenly shook and a red feather fan suddenly opened up in her palm. Clang clang, the sound of weapons clashing was extremely crisp. The glower flame fan in Yiqing Luo's hands coincidentally blocked a sharp dagger. She raised her eyes slightly and met Miao Rongrong's eyes, which were filled with shock and disbelief. Yiqing Luo's gaze was like a torch as she stared straight into Miao Rongrong's eyes. Her long and narrow eyes overflowed with a meaningful smile. But Miao Rongrong could clearly see that the curve of the young girl's lips was suffused with a chilling coldness that made one shudder. You. She opened her mouth in disbelief. She couldn't believe that Yi Luo could still maintain such a sharp reaction when facing a dying person. She also couldn't believe that her foolproof plan was seen through by Yiqing Luo. Surprised? Yiqing Luo smiled lightly, her voice was calm and her face was still elegant. But the more it was like this, the more it made Miao Rongrong's heart felt as though it was being strangled by something, as though it was about to be torn into pieces. It made one horrified and terrified. Yiqing Luo continued to smile as her 5 fingers moved. The red feather fan in her hand rotated in her palm. Miao Rongrong felt a sharp pain coming from the hand which was holding the dagger. The dagger in her hand fell onto her bed. At the same time, Yiqing Luo closed the glower flame fan and with a flip, a sharp blade slid out from the fan handle. The cold and sharp blade gleamed with a cold glint as it stuck to Miao Rongrong's neck. Following that, Yiqing Luo glanced sideways and looked behind her. As expected, Miao Yixiong was sprawled on the ground in a sorry state, spitting out blood. As for Dmo Xian, he stood elegantly by the side, his deep inky eyes gazed deeply at her. She glanced sideways. The cold lines on the man's face softened. The corners of his lips curled upwards, his eyes filled with adoration. The two of you knew from the beginning, knew. Miao Yixiong coughed as he staggered to his feet, blood dripping from his mouth. Yes, we know. Yiqing Luo tilted her head as her brows revealed an elegant smile. Cooperating with you is merely to see what kind of high-level tricks you can come up with. She paused for a moment, and then her smile turned into a sneer. But I'm very disappointed. Your techniques are too weak. Miao Yixiong's face was ashen and filled with ruthlessness. There was no trace of the kindness he had before. It was hideous, twisted, and extremely terrifying. Yiqing Luo looked down at Miao Rongrong with a pale face. She couldn't believe that the outcome had completely gone against her plan. She moved the glower flame fan in her hands. The sharp blade left a small mark on Miao Rongrong's neck. Blood gushed out. Miao Rongrong was so shocked that her body shrank, her eyes widened in horror, but she didn't dare to open her mouth or shout out a word. What does Miao Yixiong want to do? Yiqing Luo looked at Dmo Xian, and then looked at Miao Yixiong, who was standing unsteadily, somewhat curious about their plans. Chapter 26-22. It was indeed a parasite. Yiqing Luo sneered, "You have the guts to use a parasite on you." She raised her brows as she stared at Miao Yixiong, her gaze scanning his body. Where's his parasite? Dmo Xian's gaze turned cold as he shook his head. In his mind, he recalled the earlier scene, just as Yiqing Luo bent over to check on Miao Rongrong's condition. His gaze had been on Yiqing Luo. It was at this moment. Miao Yixiong quietly moved behind him. Miao Yixiong's movements were extremely gentle. But the moment he moved, it caused the air to fluctuate. He had already sensed it. And because of this, before Miao Yixiong could get close, he was subdued by him. He clearly saw Miao Yixiong swiftly retracting his hand. That flash of black wooden box, a fingernail-sized parasite, came into view. But after Miao Yixiong was subdued, he used his perception to scan Miao Yixiong. He didn't sense any signs of the parasite. Couldn't find any signs of the parasite? Yiqing Luo squinted her eyes as her gaze scanned Miao Yixiong from top to bottom. Indeed, she didn't sense any other living being's presence. But since Dmo Xian saw Miao Yixiong holding the parasite and wanted to use it on him, then Miao Yixiong must have hidden the parasite on him. But what method did Miao Yixiong use to hide the presence of the parasite in front of Dmo Xian and her? When Yiqing Luo and Dmo Xian's gaze fell onto Miao Yixiong, Miao Yixiong's face was filled with gloomy clouds as his brows were overflowing with viciousness. He tensed up as his gaze fell onto Miao Rongrong, who was trembling in fear on the bed as he gritted his teeth. Trash. If it wasn't for Miao Rongrong, this plan, no matter how vigilant the Overlord and Yi Luo were, they would definitely succeed. It was all because of Miao Rongrong, that trash. Under such circumstances, she still couldn't subdue Yi Luo. Because of the Overlord's pampering towards Yi Luo. As long as she subdued Yi Luo, she would be able to make the Overlord surrender. Wait a minute. Miao Yixiong's ruthless eyes flashed with a trace of chilliness. His eyes were covered with a thin layer of coldness. Under the evil aura, it wasn't obvious at all. Miao Rongrong, who was reprimanded by Miao Yixiong, suddenly felt that she had been wronged. She's a cripple, you're also a cripple, the both of you are just about the same. Yiqing Luo's lips curled up into a smile. Miao Yixiong's face was ashen as he stared at Yiqing Luo. The resentment in his eyes was extremely obvious. Yiqing Luo ignored his gaze as she continued to smile. Leader Miao, I gave you a second chance but you refused to accept it, so don't blame me and Ah Xian. Opportunity? Miao Yixiong was so angry that the wounds all over his body were hurting as if they were being torn apart. He sneered, "You are giving me a chance, giving the Miaogu clan a chance? You clearly knew that I and that trash were plotting against you. Come and laugh at us." Yiqing Luo blinked her eyes as she exclaimed in surprise, "Yeah, Chief Miao has actually become smart. You." Miao Yixiong was so angry that the muscles on his face were trembling, the blood in his chest was about to gush out from his mouth. His eyes were gloomy as he clenched his fists tightly, suppressing the urge to vomit blood. "Kill me or dismember me as you wish. I want to see if our Miaogu clan, which has existed for hundreds of years, can be destroyed just because you say so." Yiqing Luo was slightly surprised. She couldn't help but took a few glances at Miao Yixiong. Chapter 26-23. According to what she thought would happen next, Miao Yixiong knew that he had no chance to fight back. Weren't they supposed to kneel and beg for mercy in order to survive? That was more like Miao Yixiong's personality. Could it be? What other tricks did he have? Oh right, in Miao Yixiong's hands, there was still that goo worm which even Dmo Xian was unable to detect. He still had not given up on the idea of poisoning Dmo Xian. Yiqing Luo thought of this point. Dmo Xian naturally thought of this as well. He did not care about the goo poison. If he wanted Miao Yixiong's life, he could have taken his life before Miao Yixiong took out the poison. He was only standing here to accompany his little Luo heir. Whether it was Miao Yixiong or Miao Rongrong, all of them had the potential to help Long Yunzhan suppress the poison. Miao Yixiong had to stay alive. The unknown poison was still in Miao Yixiong's body, and it was too dangerous. Ah Xian, find out where the venom in his body is. Yiqing Luo looked at Miao Rongrong who was beside her. It was probably because Yiqing Luo's attention had been placed on Miao Yixiong which led to her trembling hands. The sharp blade on the handle of the fan left several marks on Miao Rongrong's neck. Drops of blood dripped down. Miao Rongrong had already fallen into a coma. He looked at the sharp blade that was stained with blood. Yiqing Luo frowned slightly as she rubbed the sharp blade on Miao Rongrong's body, until the blood on the blade was wiped clean. She took out a handful of medicinal powder from the profound phoenix ring and sprinkled it on the sharp blade. This was the cleaning powder that Yiqing Luo was researching on. While she was disinfecting the sharp blade, she turned her head and walked towards Dmo Xian. "Animals are very sensitive to goo worms. I'll let Chi come out and look for it. Be careful of the parasite." Dmo Xian stretched out his hand and grabbed the young lady's wrist, pulling her to his side. His tall and sturdy body completely blocked Yiqing Luo in front of her, obstructing the distance between Yiqing Luo and Miao Yixiong. Yiqing Luo kept the glower flame fan and called out Chi to sniff the scent of the goo worm. When he saw Chi-Chi's petite little kitten appear, he felt a chill run down his spine. Miao Yixiong's pupils contracted. He took a few steps back, his eyes filled with vigilance. "Ao." Chi seemed to have sensed something and suddenly let out a low growl. "You found something?" Yiqing Luo understood the meaning of Chi-Chi's cry. She walked over and bent down to hug Chi. Just as she was about to turn around and pull Dmo Xian along with Chi-Chi's reminder, to find the hidden goo worm on Miao Yixiong. When she turned around, her eyes suddenly widened when she saw the figure behind her. Her expression changed abruptly and her little hand immediately grabbed onto Dmo Xian's arm. "Ah Xian, be careful." Her other hand swiftly raised up and a majestic wave of air rose from her palm. With a force that could topple the mountains and overturn the seas, it struck towards Dmo Xian's back. Damned Miao Rongrong. He actually pretended to be unconscious to deceive her. He actually wanted to sneak an attack on Dmo Xian while all their attention was on Miao Yixiong. She sure has guts. Yiqing Luo's eyes were filled with a cold murderous intent which was extremely cold. But, after her palm struck out, Yiqing Tang's expression changed. Miao Rongrong had no intention of dodging. Instead, He met her palm strike head-on and rushed towards Dmo Xian. Miao Rongrong's eyes and face were filled with madness and distortion. She didn't want to live anymore. Yiqing Luo's fingers clenched tightly as she pulled Dmo Xian's arm and was about to rush in front of him to block Miao Rongrong's attack. However, the man didn't move an inch. He held the young lady's slender waist tightly as his deep and chilly peach blossom eyes seemed to be engulfed with thick black billowing waves. Chapter 26-24. Xian. Yiqing Luo struggled to break free from Dmo Xian's arms. Even though he had discovered that Miao Rongrong was going to make a move on Dmo Xian. Then, she tried to stop Miao Rongrong. It seemed like a long time. In reality, it only took a few breaths. Her struggles, to Dmo Xian, were of no use. He could only watch helplessly. Miao Rongrong's face, which was filled with a maniacal smile, grew larger in front of his eyes. Yiqing Luo saw it clearly. In Miao Rongrong's hand was a palm-sized transparent porcelain bottle and she threw it onto Dmo Xian's back. Inside the porcelain bottle was a thick red liquid that looked like human blood. What made Yiqing Luo's expression change abruptly and her pupils constricted? Floating in the middle of the liquid was a little bug that was not much bigger than an ant. The insect was greenish-black in color. It was extremely obvious in the blood-colored liquid. Goo worms. Goo worms again. Although Yiqing Luo didn't know much about venomous insects. However, when he saw that this strange insect was taken out from Miao Rongrong's hands, he couldn't help but frown. It could only be the goo worms. Yiqing Luo tried her best to raise her hand, trying to wave the porcelain bottle away. But the moment that porcelain bottle smashed onto Dmo Xian's body. Then, it shattered into pieces. That greenish-black goo worm was moving at the speed of light, fusing into Dmo Xian's skin. Xian. Yiqing Luo's eyes surfaced a murderous chill as she struggled even harder. Her widened eyes gradually reddened. The goo worm had entered Dmo Xian's body. He didn't know if it was an illusion. Yiqing Luo felt that the man who was hugging her tightly seemed to have become heavier. Yiqing Luo felt flustered and raised her hand to push Dmo Xian's chest, trying to raise her head to look at the man's face. But Dmo Xian's long arm covered her head tightly. Above her head, the man's low and steady voice floated down, "I'm fine." "Are you stupid? Based on your speed, you should have been able to avoid it." Yiqing Luo's voice was almost choking. No matter how steady Dmo Xian's voice was, no matter how he acted as if nothing had happened, Yiqing Luo could also guess it. Dmo Xian was definitely not fine like what he said. Otherwise, it was impossible for Dmo Xian to stop her from raising her head. "You're right behind me." Dmo Xian hugged her tightly. "Trust me, I'm really fine. Just let me hug you for a while." A few simple sentences. As strong as Yiqing Luo was, her tears still rolled down uncontrollably from the corners of her eyes. Her little hands clutched the front of Dmo Xian's robes tightly. Because she was behind him. If he dodged, Miao Rongrong's goo worm would land on her. So, he chose to protect her and suffered the pain of the parasite entering his body. It was all because of her. If it wasn't for her, Xian wouldn't have been poisoned. Ahaha. Ha ha ha. You didn't expect this, did you? After all the planning, you still can't escape this fate. Miao Yixiong laughed proudly. His eyes were ruthless and murderous as he looked at the two people hugging in front of him. The plan succeeded. The plan succeeded, ha ha ha, that's not a love goo, Miao Rongrong, who had successfully implanted the goo worm into Dmo Xian's body, took on the palm strike which Yiqing Luo struck out in a fit of rage. Miao Rongrong seemed to have lost half of her life as she laid on the ground, barely breathing. Miao Yixiong bared his teeth, "Not a love goo. What kind of goo is that? How dare you hide a goo worm behind my back?" Miao Rongrong's lips twitched weakly. She didn't bother about Miao Yixiong. Chapter 26-25. Trash. Miao Yixiong scolded angrily. Damn it. He thought that Miao Rongrong, that trash, had become smarter and learnt to hold back. She finally managed to implant a goo worm into the overlord. But it wasn't the love worm in the plan. His chilly eyes narrowed into a slit as he stared coldly at the young lady who had her back facing him, nestled in the man's arms, sobbing softly. The madness in his eyes gradually turned sinister. He swiftly raised his right hand and covered his chest. His 5 fingers suddenly curled. His sharp fingernails scratched the skin on his chest. 5 fingers sank into his own chest. The two of them who were hugging each other sensed a surge of profound chi fluctuation. Yiqing Luo was hugged tightly by the man and was unable to struggle free. She could only vaguely see. Miao Yixiong's palm was filled with red blood. The thick blood gradually took shape in his palm. Compared to the goo worm that Miao Rongrong threw onto Dmo Xian, it was several times bigger. Miao Yixiong actually hid the goo worm in his profound jade heart. No wonder she and Dmo Xian had not sensed any signs of life from Miao Yixiong. Sealed in the profound jade heart. No one would be able to sense it. But it was impossible for Miao Yixiong not to know. To nurture such an evil thing in the profound jade heart. It would affect his body. If his luck was bad, there was a possibility of being devoured by the goo worm. Miao Yixiong actually used such a method to hide the goo worm for them. Xian. Let's go quickly. From Miao Yixiong and Miao Rongrong's conversation earlier. Miao Rongrong had poisoned Dmo Xian. It wasn't planned by the father and daughter pair. But Miao Rongrong's selfishness. That ant-sized goo worm was different from the goo worm that Miao Yixiong wanted to plant. Miao Yixiong had painstakingly planned for such a long time. It was to implant the goo worm in his hands into Dmo Xian's body. That goo worm. There was definitely a huge problem. Hugging the man's waist tightly, Yiqing Luo prepared to move along with him. But the man's body was as hard as a rock. She couldn't move him at all. Xian. Yiqing Luo's voice trembled as she realized that the goo worm which was implanted into Dmo Xian's body was much more harmful than what she had imagined. Obviously, Dmo Xian now unable to move. She bit her lower lip and both her hands hugged Dmo Xian's waist tightly. Chi, come over and bring Xian away. Her back was almost to Miao Yixiong. Miao Yixiong still had the strength to take out that goo worm from the profound heart jade. He would definitely have the strength to poison them. Dmo Xian's body had already been implanted with a goo worm. He absolutely could not let Miao Yixiong implant the goo worm into Dmo Xian's body again. Yiqing Luo could feel the biting cold air and the fluctuation of the air behind her. But she couldn't hide. Just like before, when Dmo Xian blocked in front of her. There was no turning back, no hesitation. Because she was hiding. Miao Yixiong's goo worm would be implanted into Dmo Xian. But what Yiqing Luo didn't expect was, when Miao Yixiong saw her back, he had already changed his target. His current target was aimed at Yiqing Luo. The Overlord's ability was unfathomable. Even if he was poisoned by the goo worm, it didn't mean that he had lost the ability to battle. Rather than to poison the Overlord. Why not? Poison Yi Luo, that slut. At least, Yi Luo was easier to control. As long as he controlled Yi Luo, would the Overlord not surrender obediently? Perhaps. Chapter 26-26. This thought made Miao Yixiong's heart like a demon. He was mumbling, Yi Luo. Yi Luo. Yi Luo. Yiqing Luo didn't know that Miao Yixiong had already targeted her. But even if she knew, she wouldn't avoid him at all. Yiqing Luo's back was facing Miao Yixiong. Other than sensing that Miao Yixiong was getting closer, she didn't notice that. Miao Yixiong's crazed and malevolent face, that pair of vicious eyes, lingered. That wisp of faintly discernible black aura. It was fleeting. No one could catch it. Chi heard Yiqing Luo's command and let out a low growl. Its tiger claws slammed hard on the ground. The tiny kitten body suddenly transformed into an ordinary-sized white tiger. It opened its mouth, revealing its sharp teeth, gleaming coldly. Chi's speed was extremely fast. Within a few breaths, it had already rushed to Dmo Xian's back. It opened its mouth and was about to bite Dmo Xian's robe. Ah woo. A low growl was heard. Chi's teeth collided. It bit empty air. At the same time, Miao Yixiong's palm was full of blood, with a goo worm stuck in the blood, following the swift and fierce palm wind, heading straight for Yiqing Luo's back. Yi, Luo. Obediently become my dog. Miao Yixiong laughed arrogantly, his voice was hoarse. Manchester United went crazy. Just as that palm was about to land on Yiqing Luo, she felt. The man whose body was as hard as a rock, unable to move no matter what. Suddenly, her body surged with a scorching heat. That scorching feeling almost scalded her hand, which was tightly wrapped around his waist. Yiqing Luo's pupils suddenly widened, her body left Dmo Xian's and looked up at him. Her eyes were covered by the man's warm and broad palm. Bam! Yiqing Luo's body suddenly staggered as she was pulled by the man. Her footsteps were messy and she almost fell into the man's arms. At the same time, what entered her ears was the sound of the palm wind landing on her body. Her spine stiffened. Gradually, his entire body stiffened a little. Miao Yixiong's palm had hit. However, she did not feel the pain that she had imagined. He didn't feel any goo worm entering his body either. Then, she thought of the man's sudden tightening of his arms and the stagger under his feet. Her heart skipped a beat. It was as if something was clutching her heart tightly. Even her breathing had become a little more difficult. Xian, there was a hint of choking in her voice. What are you doing? She tried to look up. However, the large palm that was covering her eyes was tightly pressed against her eyes. Beside her ear was the man's dark and hoarse voice, bit by bit, fiddling with her heart. Don't cry, if you cry, I will be sad. It would have been better if he hadn't mentioned it. The moment he opened his mouth. Yiqing Luo listened to that voice, which was filled with love and heartache. She could only feel the guilt in her heart surging to her eyes. She simply couldn't hold it in. Tears wet the man's clothes. How could she not understand? Earlier, when Dmo Xian's body was emitting a scorching aura, she could still feel the robust, profound energy surging within his body. Dmo Xian had used his own profound energy to break through the goo worm which had entered his body. He did this just to protect her once again. Miao Yixiong. I want you to die. Chapter 26-27. Miao Yixiong. He dared to make a move on Xian. Even if he died 1,000 times, 10,000 times, it would not be enough to repay for what he had done to Xian. She wanted Miao Yixiong to suffer and die in pain. Yiqing Luo's rationality was gradually swallowed up. The profound jade heart in her chest also gradually became scorching hot. Her eyes, at this moment, were filled with a blood-like coquettish and gloomy coldness. The current Yiqing Luo was like an Azura from hell. Her entire person was filled with a bloodthirsty, sadistic cold intent. Ah ha ha ha. Want my life? Ha ha ha. Without the Overlord, you still want my life? Miao Yixiong laughed sinisterly. He stood up shakily. On his chest, there was still blood gushing out from the hole that his 5 fingers had pierced. The thick liquid soaked his clothes. He didn't seem to notice it at all. His ruthless eyes, crazily and proudly, looked at Yiqing Luo. Towards Yiqing Luo's murderous intent, he had no fear at all. What did you do to Xian? Yiqing Luo's blood-red eyes, coquettish and cold, like a sharp blade, ruthlessly cutting Miao Yixiong's skin. Ha ha ha. I didn't intend to do anything to him, but a freak combination of factors let my plan succeed. Miao Yixiong laughed even more crazily, from now onwards. He, Dmo Xian, is my Miao Gu family's dog. A woo. Behind her, Chi Chi's tiger roar suddenly came out. This roar also called back a trace of Yi Qing Luo's rationality. Yi Qing Luo turned her head. She saw the man who forcefully used his profound energy to break through the goo worm entering his body, fell straight down. Ah Xian. Yi Qing Luo's blood-red eyes flashed, the murderous intent gradually dissipated. The surging emotions in her chest were also suppressed. She flew swiftly towards Dmo Xian, trying to catch his fallen body. A woo. Chi Chi was already lying under Dmo Xian. The soft fur firmly caught Dmo Xian. Ah Xian. Yi Qing Luo half squatted beside Dmo Xian, raised her hand, and touched his face. It was cold to the touch. Beads of cold sweat rolled down his forehead. Ha ha ha, Miao Yixiong's wild laughter was extremely loud. He laughed heartily. As though the humiliation which they had suffered from Yi Qing Luo and Dmo Xian for the past few days had been returned to them by several folds. Looking at the unconscious Dmo Xian. Then, he looked at Yi Luo, whose face was full of heartache and whose eyes were still dripping with tears. He felt more and more satisfied. Yi Luo, don't worry and die. Our Miao Gu deathly silence will definitely take good care of this dog. His words fell. Miao Yixiong's ferocious and violent attack had already overtaken Yi Qing Luo's direction. This tyrannical power, it was absolutely not the same strength he had when he was facing Dmo Xian. Yi Qing Luo's keen senses told her that something was amiss. She lowered her voice and reminded Chi Chi, take good care of Xian. Don't let anyone near him. Soon after, with a flick of his fingers, the devouring flame fan in his hand abruptly stirred up a whirlwind, bringing with it a ferocious and chilling killing intent as it met Miao Yixiong's attack, seeing Yi Qing Luo's counterattack. Miao Yixiong's twisted face curled into a treacherous and complacent sneer. As though he was ridiculing Yi Qing Luo for taking the bait. Chapter 26-28. Just as Miao Yixiong finished his words, a strong gust of wind swept through the entire bedroom. Miao Yixiong opened his palm towards Miao Rongrong's direction. That hurricane lifted Miao Rongrong's body into Miao Yixiong's palm. Miao Yixiong casually threw Miao Rongrong to Dmo Xian's side. With this fall, Miao Rongrong felt as if her internal organs were about to be shattered. She endured the pain. She had no time to care about the bleeding wound on her body. Bit by bit, she moved towards Dmo Xian. Get lost. Miao Rongrong, if you dare to get close to my man, I will make you beg for death. Yi Qing Luo's eyes were bloodshot as she stared straight at Miao Rongrong. The extreme chill was bone-chilling. It made Miao Rongrong freeze on the spot. Ow woo. Taking advantage of Miao Rongrong's momentary daze, Chi Chi opened its mouth and bit Miao Rongrong's arm with its sharp teeth. Miao Rongrong screamed. Fresh blood flowed out from Chi Chi's mouth. She could vaguely hear the sound of bones breaking. Yi Luo, soon. Your overlord will open his eyes, but by then, what awaits you will be. He. You know. Yi Qing Luo was about to rush to Dmo Xian's side to stop Miao Rongrong from getting close. Miao Yixiong pestered Yi Qing Luo again. He laughed sinisterly, as if he had already imagined what would happen when Dmo Xian opened his eyes. His face was filled with a complacent smile. What did Miao Yixiong's words mean? What kind of poison did he cast on Dmo Xian? Yi Qing Luo's heart was getting more and more flustered. Towards Miao Yixiong, who was pestering her, her attacks became more and more severe. But she didn't know why. This Miao Yixiong, who was obviously not that powerful and was afraid of death. His strength had improved by leaps and bounds. She couldn't break free from Miao Yixiong's pestering. On the other side, even though Miao Rongrong's arm was bitten by Qi Qi, she still stubbornly climbed to Dmo Xian's side. That face, which was distorted due to pain, was filled with a crazy smile. She stared at Dmo Xian's face in a daze. Her blood-stained hands wanted to caress his face. But when he saw the blood on his fingertips, she paused. Then, he laughed foolishly. Lord Overlord is so noble and elegant. I'm very dirty now, so I can't dirty you. Later. I'll let you hug me, and you'll have to hug me. My Lord Overlord, roar. Hearing Miao Rongrong's words, Chi-Chi's eyes were filled with anger. The Overlord belongs to Master. The Overlord can only belong to the Master. This roar. Chi-Chi did not control her strength well. With a crack, Miao Rongrong's right arm was bitten off. Blood spurted out. Miao Rongrong did not respond. Her eyes stared unblinkingly at Dmo Xian. It was obvious that he had become an idiot. This scene fell into Yiqing Luo's eyes. She evaded Miao Yixiong's attacks while keeping an eye on Dmo Xian's situation. When he saw Miao Rongrong's abnormal reaction, he felt a chill run down his spine. Her heart skipped a beat. An extremely ominous premonition began to spread in his heart. Something was wrong. Something was very wrong. Miao Rongrong's performance was even scarier than that idiot. Her own arm was bitten off, but she didn't feel any pain at all. And Miao Yixiong, what on earth was going on, to be able to use his profound grade to fight her to a draw in just a few days? No, it was not a draw. Because Miao Yixiong did not use his full strength. He was just trying to delay time. Chapter 26-29. Girl, don't let Miao Rongrong get close to Sovereign. Yiqing Luo felt a burning sensation on her wrist and heard Old Man Tsang's urgent voice in her mind. You must go to the Overlord's side immediately. Otherwise, even a venerable sovereign would not be able to resist the corrosion of the goo poison. Yiqing Luo heard the urgency in Old Man Tsang's tone. What kind of venom did they use on Xian? That's love goo. Old Man Tsang quickly explained. The host implanted with the love goo will faint for the time it takes for an incense stick to burn. During this time, the love goo will completely invade the host's consciousness. After the time it takes for an incense stick to burn, the first person that the host sees when he opens his eyes will be the person that he is attached to and devoted all of his affection to. Old Man Tsang's words made Yiqing Luo's heart violently tremble. It was as if something had pierced her heart. Miao Yixiong wants to use the love goo to control Dizun and make him fall in love with Miao Rongrong. Old Man Tsang's tone became more and more urgent. Girl, you can't let Dizun become attached to Miao Rongrong. Otherwise, with Dizun's strength and character, he would rather die than listen to the Miao tribe's orders. Yiqing Luo's fingers curled up as she looked at Dmo Xian. Her heart convulsed, and it was hard for her to breathe. This was, with Xian's temperament. He was controlled by a goo worm. He would rather perish indiscriminately. Furthermore, it was the Miaogu clan that wanted to control him. In other words, it was necessary to control him to hurt her and the people around her. How could Xian bear to do that? She did not know how powerful the goo poison was. However, he also believed that it wasn't a coincidence that the Miao tribe had survived for nearly 1,000 years. She could not let Xian become a puppet of the Miaogu family. TSK. You're so worried about a man that you don't even care about your own life? Miao Yixiong's cold laughter rang in her ears. Yiqing Luo was in a daze. This gave Miao Yixiong an opportunity to strike his palm on Yiqing Luo's shoulder. Yiqing Luo took a few steps back. The sharp pain in her shoulder made her face slightly pale. Yiqing Luo pursed her pink lips tightly as she placed one hand on the shoulder that was hit. From the corner of her eyes, she glanced at Dmo Xian's direction. His heart burned with anxiety. From the time Dmo Xian was implanted with the venom, it had already been at least half an incense's time. Miao Yixiong would never give her a chance to get close to Dmo Xian. What should she do? Miao Rongrong, that lunatic. In order to gain Dmo Xian's attention, she didn't even care about her own life. If this went on, sooner or later, it would be too late for Dmo Xian to open his eyes. Old man Sung's voice sounded again. Following old man Sung's surprised tone, Yiqing Luo felt the scorching heat on her arm and quickly shifted to her shoulder. Old man Sung continued, No. Little girl, Miao Yixiong's power is completely different from before. Yiqing Luo's expression was grave as she nodded lightly, I know. She had fought with Miao Yixiong before. How could he not know Miao Yixiong's strength? The palm landed on her shoulder. She was even more certain of her guess. This Miao Yixiong, otherwise, he would find their Miao Gu tribe's forbidden Gu worms and raise his strength for a short period of time. Either, that was, the mysterious person who had come into contact with Miao Rongrong, the one who had surpassed the Nirvana realm, had helped him. She still remembered the time when Miao Rongrong was imprisoned in the Battle King's residence by Yuan Zhan. Miao Rongrong had met that mysterious person. At that time, even Jun Qingwu had some fear towards that person's strength. If it was because of that mysterious person. Chapter 26:30. No, what I mean is. Old man Sung lowered his voice. This palm wind of his carries a very familiar power. Familiar? Yiqing Luo's expression froze. Immediately, she flew up and swiftly avoided Miao Yixiong's next attack. Yes, although the feeling is very weak, but I can confirm that this palm wind is mixed with the aura of the dark forces. Old man Sung's voice was obviously solemn. Dark forces? These 4 words made Yiqing Luo's eyes widen suddenly. Her gaze towards Miao Yixiong was also filled with astonishment. Hadn't the dark forces been taken away by the upper realm's peace messenger? How could there still be the aura of the dark forces left in Nirvana realm? Yiqing Luo frowned. This matter was getting more and more complicated. Forget it. Now was not the time to consider this. She had to snatch her man back first. After that, she would slowly investigate the reason why Miao Yixiong became stronger. Chi. Yiqing Luo pulled herself together and quickly retreated while shouting Chi's name. Chi bit off Miao Rongrong's arm. As a sacred beast which had not killed for thousands of years, it felt that it was too bloody. Moreover, Miao Rongrong's flesh was too smelly. It was filled with the stench of Gu worms. It really couldn't take a second bite. It heard Yiqing Luo's cry. It almost slithered out from Dmo Xian's body and dashed towards Yiqing Luo. Trap Miao Yixiong, I'll go to Xian first. Yiqing Luo quickly retreated behind Chi. Ow Wu. Chi indicated that this was absolutely no problem. Chi let out a long howl and suddenly pounced towards Miao Yixiong. Yi Luo. Miao Yixiong was gloating because he hit Yiqing Luo. But he saw Yiqing Luo suddenly change to a snow-white tiger. She wanted this tiger to entangle him? An ordinary magical beast dared to try and stop him? Overestimating herself. Miao Yixiong sneered, totally not putting Chi in his eyes. Profound energy gathered in his palms and directly hit Chi's tiger head. He was completely confident that this palm strike would definitely be able to smash the white tiger into meat paste. Bam bam bam. As the wind from the palm slammed down, the sound of the force stirring up everything in the surroundings was heard. A strong hurricane swept through the bedroom. A huge pit appeared on the ground. Rubble flew everywhere, and the room began to shake. Miao Yixiong retracted his palms and quickly scanned his surroundings. That palm of his just now, he missed the white tiger. Roar, a majestic tiger roar came from behind. Miao Yixiong turned around. A claw directly scratched his face. Chi's sharp claws scratched the skin on Miao Yixiong's face, leaving bloody scratches. Miao Yixiong's face was a bloody mess. Yiqing Luo's lips curled into a smile as she gave Chi a thumbs up. She then turned around and dashed towards Dmo Xian's direction. Get out of my way. Get out of my way. The overlord is mine, mine. Miao Rongrong sensed Yiqing Luo's approach and she abruptly raised her head as her pair of sinister eyes stared at Yiqing Luo. That crazy and malevolent face, sinister, was extremely terrifying. Yiqing Luo met with Miao Rongrong's eyes which were filled with madness and infatuation. She knew that this Miao Rongrong's mental state was not normal. Calculating the time in her heart, one joss stick's time was almost up. Yiqing Luo couldn't be bothered with Miao Rongrong. She directly lifted her leg and kicked Miao Rongrong to the corner. She immediately squatted down and was about to get close to Dmo Xian. Chapter 2631. As soon as Miao Yixiong finished speaking, Yiqing Luo was keenly aware of the changes in the airflow. With her feet as the center, a horrifying airflow surrounded her body and attacked her. The air current that carried a murderous aura. This caused Yiqing Luo to stop in her tracks. Not good. Old Song floated around inside the azure dew bracelet. Girl Luo, Miao Yixiong wants to use a goo formation to trap you. Goo formation? What the hell was that? Just the name alone was enough to tell that it wasn't anything good. A goo formation is a formation that uses tens of thousands of goo worms. It's a long-lost forbidden goo technique. Old Man Song's voice trembled. How could Miao Yixiong use such a formation? Isn't he afraid of incurring the punishment of the heavenly Tao? This was a long-lost forbidden goo technique. Once it was used, the commotion it caused might attract the attention of the peace messenger. This was a forbidden goo technique that destroyed the balance of the Nirvana realm. If Miao Yixiong was taken away by the peace messenger, wouldn't the position of patriarch of the Miaogu aristocratic clan that he insisted on be for naught? To trap her. In order to control Dmo Xian, Miao Yixiong was even willing to take such a risk. Not allowing Yiqing Luo to think too much. The powerful streams of air around her feet gradually surrounded her. Then, countless poisonous insects of different shapes and sizes appeared in front of her. They followed the lingering airflow and wriggled towards her bit by bit. This array was extremely narrow. Yiqing Luo immediately turned around. It was very possible, touching the lingering airflow, touching the disgusting liquid that kept dripping down. The viscous green liquid was dripping. In this quiet bedroom, it was extremely strange. Lass, don't move. These goo worms have different uses. If they crawl into your body, you will be devoured by these goo worms. Starting from your internal organs, you will become their puppet. Old Man Song's voice was slightly tense. He had never expected that he would actually encounter such a sinister formation in the Nirvana realm. Yiqing Luo absolutely could not move. Before a goo worm comes into contact with a person's skin, its speed is very slow. They would follow the scent and slowly crawl to the human body, the minute Yiqing Luo was swallowed by these goo worms. So many goo worms, they would absolutely treat Yiqing Luo as food, completely swallowing her up. How do we break the formation? The fastest way. Yiqing Luo stood stiffly on the spot, her face filled with anxiety. Her eyes stared intently at Dmo Xian. The time it took for an incense stick to burn was almost up. No matter what, she had to leave this goo formation. From the corner of her eyes, she saw Miao Rongrong, who had been kicked to the corner by her, dragging her entire body covered in blood, leaning on one hand as she continuously crawled towards Dmo Xian. From this angle, Yiqing Luo could clearly see there was a black thread floating in Miao Rongrong's eyes. That thin thread seemed to be a tool to control her. I don't know much about goo. Old Man Song's heart was also burning with anxiety. He couldn't wait to rush out of the azure dew bracelet and suffer for Yiqing Luo. Unless the peace messenger rushes over at this critical juncture. Yiqing Luo, who was trapped by the goo worm. Not only did she have to watch Dmo Xian open his eyes and see Miao Rongrong, She also had to be devoured by the goo worm in front of Dmo Xian. Miao Yi Xiong was simply too sinister, too vicious. Even if the peace messenger rushed over, Dmo Xian had already opened his eyes and the first person he saw would still be Miao Rongrong. Chapter 2632. Time was running out. Looking at Miao Rongrong and Dmo Xian, they were still a few steps away. Even if Miao Rongrong crawled closer to Dmo Xian. And the moment Dmo Xian opened his eyes, he crawled to Dmo Xian's side. No. She absolutely would not allow Dmo Xian to develop any attachment towards other women. Even if it was because of the goo poison. She absolutely could not tolerate it. Her man. No matter when, it could only belong to her alone. Lass, don't be rash. Old man Sung realized what Yiqing Luo wanted to do and immediately called out to stop her. Yiqing Luo stared fixedly at the unconscious man lying on the ground. His gaze was so gentle that it seemed to carry the entire world. Her pink lips moved slightly, and she said word by word, "If I have to be separated from Ah Xian and see him no longer love me, I'd rather die with him." What future? What search for his origins? Find out the secret of the Azure Dew bracelet? What? Wait a minute, when Dmo Xian no longer loved her, lost his consciousness, and became a puppet. None of them counted for anything. Before she fell in love with Dmo Xian, she was indeed indifferent to love. But now, she had fallen in love with Dmo Xian. She wanted to stay by Dmo Xian's side forever. She had already determined that Dmo Xian was her man. If Dmo Xian forgot her because of the love worm, and no longer loved her, she believed that if Dmo Xian was conscious, he would also make the same decision as her. She had said it from the beginning. Her love could not tolerate even a grain of sand. She loves Dmo Xian. They loved each other so much that they would rather die together than be so close to each other but unable to touch each other. You could call her selfish or heartless. At this moment, her eyes and heart were filled with Dmo Xian alone. The corners of her mouth curled up into a chilly smile. It was as if a beautiful poppy had bloomed on her face. She exuded a suffocating yet irresistible charm. She raised her hand and pressed it against her chest. A sparkling and translucent pearl appeared in her palm. Calming pearl? Lass, you really want to do this? Old man Sung really couldn't understand what Yiqing Luo was thinking about right now. Even though Venerable Sovereign had been poisoned by the love goo. But that didn't mean that it couldn't be solved. At least he was still alive, wasn't he? Why must she sacrifice her own life to become the first person that Dmo Xian saw? He even took out the tranquility bead. Yiqing Luo obviously wanted to borrow the power of the divine phoenix profound heart jade to forcefully break the formation. Yiqing Luo herself was very clear about it. Her body had long since lost control of her profound heart jade several times. It could no longer withstand the protective power of the divine phoenix profound heart jade. Forcefully expending the power of the divine phoenix profound heart jade. There was an 80% chance Yiqing Luo would be completely swallowed by the divine phoenix profound heart jade. However, no matter how old man Sung persuaded Yiqing Luo, but he could only watch as Yiqing Luo's profound energy kept on rising. The divine phoenix profound heart jade that had lost the suppression of the heart-settling pearl, when Yiqing Luo forcibly mobilized the power of the profound heart jade. Bit by bit, something strange was happening. Yi Luo, what are you trying to do? Are you crazy? Miao Yixiong, who was being bitten by Qi, had also sensed Yiqing Luo's movement. He looked in disbelief at the increasingly thick profound energy in the goo formation. Yi Luo, that slut. Was she trying to forcefully break the formation? For a man, she didn't even want her own life? Chapter 2633. Your Majesty. Wait for me, Miao Rongrong spat out a sentence with a weak breath and sped up the squirming speed of her body. Just a little more, she was about to make the overlord fall in love with her. He was doted on by the Dizun. She was still the high and mighty Lady Miao, the future holy virgin of the Miao tribe. She looked at the handsome man in front of her. Miao Rongrong trembled as she stretched out that one hand which was still intact, and grabbed onto Dmo Xian's robes. Bang! An irresistible burst of profound energy charged towards Miao Rongrong's outstretched hand. The dark force was like a sharp blade. Quickly and coldly, Miao Rongrong's hand was cut off. Get your filthy hands off my man. A cold and murderous voice drifted into the ears of the father and daughter of the Miao family bit by bit. Yiqing Luo's eyes were bloodshot. His eyes were sharp and his killing intent was obvious. He was in the middle of thousands of goo worms. The flames on her body forced those goo insects to not dare to come close to her. Miao Rongrong, quick, quick. She couldn't get out. There's no way she can escape from the goo array. Miao Yi Xiong was so shocked by Yiqing Luo's look that he broke out in cold sweat. He only felt that the look in the girl's eyes. There was not the slightest bit of warmth. It was like looking at a dead person. Fear spread in his heart. He subconsciously urged Miao Rongrong. Dmo Xian was about to open his eyes. No matter what, Miao Rongrong was definitely in an advantageous position. It didn't matter even if he lost his hands. The venerable emperor who was poisoned by the love goo. Miao Rongrong was extremely ugly. Dmo Xian would love her as much as his own life. Miao Rongrong also knew this. Even if her mind was not clear, she knew that she must become Dmo Xian's woman. One hand was bitten off. One of his hands was cut off by qi. She didn't seem to feel any pain. He could not feel the spread of blood. Using her own body, she arched towards the direction of Dmo Xian. Yiqing Luo's eyes turned even redder. Bit by bit, an extremely cold killing intent and madness lingered on it. The mystic rank was still increasing. It was about to burst the goo worms that were surrounding him into a mountain. Luo girl. Wake up. You can't do this. Quickly put the heart-calming bead back into the profound heart jade. If this goes on, not only will you not be able to break the goo formation, your meridians might even be severed. Old man Sung's voice kept on dissuading Yiqing Luo in her mind. It was so anxious that it incessantly used the azure dew bracelet to burn Yiqing Luo's wrist. I'm fine. Before Xian opens his eyes, I won't let anything happen to me. Yiqing Luo's consciousness was still clear. Her eyes were filled with love as she gazed deeply at Dmo Xian's peerless and elegant face. His breathing gradually calmed down. Bang! There was a loud crash. The tightly shut door of the bedroom collapsed with a loud crash. Dust and gravel flew all over the ground. A clear voice rang from the door. Qing Luo, are you all right? Sorry I'm late. This voice had an instant of grooming. Yiqing Luo's mind was suddenly in a daze. His crimson eyes slowly moved to the door. However, she did not have time to see the person standing at the door. A gigantic goo worm fell from the sky and landed beside her. This goo worm was roughly the size of the woman's two palms put together. Compared to the thousands of different goo worms around, it was indeed considered to be gigantic. The goo worm was entirely black. Chapter 2634. The flames on Yiqing Luo's body, at this moment, inexplicably stopped. She lowered her eyes and looked at the gigantic goo worm by her feet. Intuition told her that this goo worm would not hurt her. Qing Luo, the king of venomous worms is here, you don't need to care about the other goo worms, go to the overlord quickly. That clear voice rang once again, urging Yiqing Luo. Yiqing Luo noticed. The moment that gigantic goo worm landed by her feet, the surrounding wriggling goo worms all started to crawl upwards as though they were escaping. The green viscous liquid kept dripping as the densely packed goo worms crawled quickly. Yi Qing Luo didn't think any further. She lifted her leg and charged towards Dmo Xian. Those goo worms which were originally trapped around her. When they sensed her approaching, they started to move away. The densely packed goo worms, all sorts of colors and shapes, were separated into two sides. This was really a visual impact. But Yi Qing Luo didn't have the mood to bother about this visual impact. All her thoughts were placed on Dmo Xian. So much so that when Miao Yixiong saw Yi Qing Luo rushing out of the array and saw the person standing at the door, his face was filled with rage and he bellowed. Yi Qing Luo didn't even bother about it. Miao Yi, you vile spawn. You stole the Miao family's ancient goo worm and now you dare to help an outsider to deal with your biological father. Miao Yixiong was so angry that his intestines were churning. He couldn't believe it. When the plan was about to succeed, it was ruined by Miao Yi, the vile spawn whom he had never cared about. Ah Xian. Yi Qing Luo rushed to Dmo Xian's side and held his hand. The man's fingers were icy cold, like ice. Her heart ached as she wrapped her hands around his hand. A pair of charming eyes stared intently at Dmo Xian's face. Very quickly, Dmo Xian's long eyelashes trembled slightly. Yi Qing Luo's eyes lit up as she delightedly leaned forward. Mine. Mine. The Overlord is mine. A hoarse roar came from Miao Rongrong's mouth. When he saw Yi Qing Luo's expression change, Miao Rongrong knew. Dmo Xian must be waking up. The Overlord could only be hers. She was the Overlord's most beloved woman. It couldn't be anyone else. It couldn't be anyone else. Miao Rongrong mustered up all her strength and not knowing where she got the energy from, she actually propped up her own body which was covered in blood as she fiercely charged towards Yi Qing Luo who was lying beside Dmo Xian. Dmo Xian's eyes moved again. At the same time, Miao Rongrong's head knocked heavily onto Yi Qing Luo's waist. Yi Qing Luo was half kneeling by Dmo Xian's side with her back straight and didn't notice Miao Rongrong's madness. The impact caused her body to sway slightly. Her entire body fell towards the other side of Dmo Xian. Seizing this opportunity, Miao Rongrong swiftly moved her face close to Dmo Xian. But, just as Yi Qing Luo's body was about to fall onto the ground beside Dmo Xian, his waist suddenly tightened. The man's broad palm held her waist tightly. Yi Qing Luo's body fell onto the man's chest. He felt a warm sensation on his lips. She was stunned, and then she realized, this fall of his was especially melodramatic. He kissed Dmo Xian's lips. What was that force on his waist just now? That familiar temperature, that familiar force. But, wasn't Xian unconscious? He who was poisoned by the love goo, how could he make such an action? Just as Yi Qing Luo's thoughts were in a mess. Chapter 2635. His eyes were as deep as the sea. He stared at Yi Qing Luo without blinking. Loving and gentle, affectionate and gentle. Even Yi Qing Luo, when she met that pair of shimmering peach blossom eyes, she lost her soul for a moment. This man was really evildoer. Perfectly grown, with peerless elegance. His imposing manner was so seductive. Wait a minute, Yi Qing Luo suddenly thought of something, as she pulled her thoughts away from the beauty. Her hand supported his chest, as she sat up straight, her eyes staring at his face in a daze. Xian. You didn't. This Dmo Xian. No matter if it was his gaze or expression, it was no different from usual. Earlier when she fell from his body. It was Dmo Xian, who pulled her back into his arms. If it wasn't for Dmo Xian's large palm, supporting her waist. Probably. The person Dmo Xian saw when he opened his eyes, would be Miao Rongrong. But, if Dmo Xian wasn't affected by the love worm. Even if the first person he saw when he opened his eyes was Miao Rongrong. Then it didn't matter anymore, The man looked at her, his gaze was still that gentle, that perfect face which made one suffocated, outlined a warm smile. His large palm was still that possessive, hugging her waist tightly. A strong and overbearing aura. An irresistible charm. It was still so familiar. Yiqing Luo heaved a sigh of relief, as a comfortable smile surfaced on her face, radiant and beautiful. Miao Rongrong, who was lying on the side, was still a step too late, as she fell stiffly to the side. All her energy was used earlier, when she bumped into Yiqing Luo. At this moment, Miao Rongrong didn't even have the energy to stand up. She was the closest. Naturally, after Dmo Xian opened his eyes, the atmosphere between the two of them was all taken in. Her eyes widened in astonishment. Why? The love worm didn't work? How could the overlord not be affected by the love worm? Wasn't his consciousness swallowed by the love worm, and only listened to the first person he saw? But Dmo Xian was obviously no different from before. Could it be that the overlord was already so powerful that he could even decode their Miaogu family's taboo? Miao Yixiong also noticed this, and his eyes were filled with astonishment. Unable to believe that even after he had infiltrated his ancestor's tomb and dug out the forbidden love goo from his ancestor, he still had no way to control Dmo Xian. How powerful was the Dizun? No. Impossible. How could it be useless? Miao Rongrong was already mentally unstable. At this moment, she was stimulated by the two of them looking at each other affectionately. She immediately exploded and shook her head desperately. He was also poisoned by my heart separation goo. How could he cure it? No, he won't love that bitchy Luo anymore, he won't. Centrifugal goo. Miao Yixiong heard these three words and looked at Miao Rongrong with his bloodied face. You used the centrifugal goo on Lord Dizun? He couldn't possibly still love Yi Luo. He wouldn't. He should have killed Yi Luo. He should have killed Yi Luo. Miao Rongrong kept repeating this sentence as if she was possessed. Obviously, he was greatly agitated. Miao Yixiong didn't need Miao Rongrong's answer. Miao Rongrong's current appearance represented her answer. Chapter 2636. Centrifugal goo. When Miao Yi heard the name of this goo poison, her delicate face immediately paled. You two are simply infuriating. As the Miao tribe leader, as the future holy maiden of the Miao tribe, you actually disobeyed the advice of your ancestors and used this kind of forbidden goo art. Evil girl, shut up. Miao Yixiong ruthlessly glared at Miao Yi. You vile spawn, if not for you, how could my Miao Gu clan have fallen to such a state? Miao Yi's face paled. Her slender fingers clenched one by one. Her lips trembled with anger. She should have lost all hope for this so-called father a long time ago. She had long since given up hoping that this so-called father would have even the slightest bit of affection for her. In the eyes of Miao Yixiong and everyone in the Miao tribe, she, Miao Yi, was an ominous person. But who knew, she was the direct descendant of the Miao tribe leader. She was the one who was truly suitable to be the holy maiden of the Miao tribe. The honor that Miao Rongrong received in the Miao tribe, it should have belonged to her. But, because of her extravagant desire for fatherly love, an extravagant desire for kinship, he was willing to give everything to Miao Rongrong. All she wanted was a little bit of love from Miao Yixiong. However, her compromise, her hope, in the end, it became the weapon that killed his mother. Her mother had died at the hands of Miao Yixiong and Miao Rongrong because of her extravagant hopes of kinship. From that moment on, Miao Yi finally understood. No matter what she did, how she did it, those who did not love her would not love her in the end. Miao Yixiong would never treat her as his daughter. Even if, give up everything. Her mother had sacrificed her life for her stupidity. A clear and melodious voice interrupted Miao Yi's thoughts. Her slightly reddened eyes blinked. A crystal clear tear rolled down from the corner of his eye. She raised her head and forced her tears back. Following that, she turned her head back and looked at that young lady whom she was willing to rely on, Qing Luo, the overlord. Is he alright? Yi Qing Luo and Dmo Xian had both stood up. The young girl's petite body nestled in the man's arms. The man's large palm did not move away from the girl's waist in the slightest. He maintained a sidelong glance. His shimmering peach blossom eyes stared deeply at Yi Qing Luo without blinking. Yi Qing Luo's body was slightly messy. Her beautiful face had also turned a little pale. Earlier when Yi Qing Luo forcibly activated the Divine Phoenix Profound Heart Jade's energy, although it was stopped due to Miao Yi's arrival. But it still caused huge damage to Yi Qing Luo's body. He's fine. Yi Qing Luo smiled slightly as she replied calmly. However, out of the corner of her eye, she subconsciously glanced at the hand on her waist. Her small hand pressed down on the back of the hand that was on her waist. The man lowered his eyes and smiled even more gently. It was as if he wanted to drown her in the warm spring water. Yi Qing Luo's heartbeats suddenly accelerated. She looked away and forced herself to calm down. She looked at Miao Rongrong, who had fallen to the side. What's the matter with the poisonous centrifugal spell? The effect of the poisonous centrifugal spell is the opposite of the love centrifugal spell. The love centrifugal spell makes the host develop a sense of attachment towards the first person they meet. The poisonous centrifugal spell makes the host forget the person whom the poisonous centrifugal spell had specified, and to that person develop killing intent. Miao Yi explained and immediately looked at Dmo Xian. The overlord is a legend like the Nirvana realm god. He doesn't seem to be affected by the poisonous centrifugal spell, so you don't have to worry. She didn't notice. After she finished explaining about the poisonous centrifugal spell. Chapter 2637. Let's leave this place first. The barrier is about to break, and the people from the Qinhua sect will be able to sense what's happening here, said Miao Yi. Before I leave, I have to give this father and daughter a big gift. Yi Qing Luo's eyes turned cold as she subconsciously increased the strength of the hand that was pressing on the back of Dmo Xian's hand. She spoke as she spoke. His tone was filled with killing intent. A pair of long and narrow eyes glowed with a cold light. Miao Yi was shocked by Yi Qing Luo's reaction. She was slightly stunned, but very quickly she understood the reason why Yi Qing Luo was so angry. Miao Yixiong and Miao Rongrong wanted to use the love goo to force Lord Dizun to fall in love with Miao Rongrong. He even poisoned Lord Dizun with the centrifugal goo that would make Lord Dizun lose his mind. This was totally stepping on Qing Luo's bottom line. Qing Luo. The Miao tribe in the northern continent has a pivotal position. If the Miao tribe's chief and eldest young miss were to die in the Qinhua sect, it would cause a war between the Miao tribe and the Qinhua sect. Miao Yi reminded as she looked at the murderous young lady. Yi Qing Luo squinted her eyes slightly as her lips curled up in an evil manner. Don't worry, I won't take their lives, after all. The one who hates them more is you. Miao Yi was stunned. Her lips moved. When did you find out? After returning from the Bu family village, I roughly guessed it. Yi Qing Luo didn't keep him guessing, plus Xian Gui's attitude towards you has confirmed my guess. Xian Gui was clearly a member of the Miao Gu aristocrat clan. However, Xian Gui's status was not high. It was also because of this that he was humiliated by Miao Rongrong in the Peach Blossom restaurant. Miao Yi lowered her eyes, a layer of guilt appearing on her pretty face. Sorry, I knew you needed Gu masters, but I hid it from you. Everyone has secrets that they don't want others to know. It's okay. Yi Qing Luo's voice was very indifferent. Miao Rongrong is already crippled. Comparing your venomous insect skills with hers, who's better? Miao Yi knew the meaning behind her question. Miao Yi looked at Yi Qing Luo and nodded her head vigorously. I'm stronger than her. Then if you become the Miao tribe leader and sacred maiden, will that make the Miao tribe become better? Yi Qing Luo nodded her head in satisfaction. as her pair of charming eyes were tainted with a sliver of radiance. Miao Yi had apparently not expected Yi Qing Luo to use such a normal tone to say such shocking words. But when he heard Yi Qing Luo's last word, Miao Yi's beautiful eyes were gradually filled with a resolute light. Yes. I will do better than them. Yi Qing Luo smiled as she patted her shoulder lightly. Following that, he held Dmo Xian's hand as they walked towards Miao Yixiong. That's right, that Gu King of yours, can I borrow it for a while? Yi Qing Luo pointed at the ancient Gu worm which was still in the Gu array, forcing those Gu worms to jump up and down. Miao Yi looked at the Gu King hesitantly. It's not easy to control. I'm afraid it will hurt you. It has already recognized you as its master. It will understand your feelings. When Yi Qing Luo finished her sentence, she suddenly had a feeling, as if the venomous Worm King was looking in her direction. He deserved to be the ancient Gu King. He could also understand human language. In this case, it would be more convenient to borrow the Gu King's power. You and Xian Gui leave first. I will leave this place before the enchantment disappears. Yi Qing Luo's lips curled upwards as she gave a bloodthirsty smile. Chapter 2638. Miao Yi bent down and touched the hard carapace on the venomous Worm King's body and whispered, I'll pick you up later. She turned around and left the bedroom. Yi Qing Luo's gaze fell onto Miao Yixiong. She didn't notice that Qi which had been pestering Miao Yixiong had unknowingly returned to the size of a cat. Its tail was wagging furiously. Its tiger eyes lit up as it wagged its tail and followed behind Miao Yi. Outside the door, a young man's panicked voice could be heard. Where did this cat come from? Don't pounce on me. The door to the bedroom was once again tightly shut. The light in the bedroom dimmed a little. Miao Yixiong's back was pressed against the wall, all his muscles tensed up. Yi Luo, this is Qinhua sect. Just like what Miao Yi said. This was Qinhua sect. His Miao tribe leader had met with an accident in Qinhua sect. Qinhua sect had to bear all the responsibility. Didn't Yi Luo have an affair with Qinhua sect? She would definitely not let Qinhua sect fall into such a predicament. Hee, a clear and melodious laughter rang out. But the coldness in it made Miao Yixiong's heart skip a beat. Why are you so nervous, Miao Yixiong? I said. I won't kill you. Yi Qing Luo smiled sweetly. The coldness between her brows was obvious. Even that pair of blood-red eyes seemed to be covered with a black fog, like thick ink. She was smiling. However, the formless pressure in the air seemed to have condensed the surrounding air. Miao Yixiong was horrified. His face was badly mutilated by Qi's claws, twitching and turning over the flesh. The blood mixed with the dust on the ground was extremely disgusting. However, this disgusting scene didn't change the young lady's expression. She just looked at him with a faint smile. There was no warmth in her gaze. This is a private matter between you, Miao Yixiong, Miao Rongrong and me. How would I involve Qinhua sect? Her sweet voice sounded like a summon from hell. At this moment, Miao Yixiong felt. The current Yi Luo looked even more intimidating than Dmo Xian beside her. Ah Xian. Yi Qing Luo looked sideways at Dmo Xian. As soon as she looked up, she met the man's gentle gaze. Her expression was soft. She gently pressed the hands around her waist. You stand here and wait for me. The hand on her waist tightened its grip. The man shook his head and stared at her. Yi Qing Luo's pink lips curled upwards as she threw her petite body into Dmo Xian's arms. The man's arms immediately wrapped around her body. Yi Qing Luo raised her arms and circled them around Dmo Xian's neck. She tiptoed slightly and kissed him on his thin lips. As if he was coaxing a child, he used a voice that only the two of them could hear and said gently, Ah Xian, listen to me. You stay here and watch me. I won't leave. The hand on her waist tightened. He seemed to be a little unhappy. but because Yiqing Luo's kiss on his lips was soft and fragrant. In the end, he released his hands and stood aside. "I'll wait for you." Yiqing Luo revealed a smile as her eyes were filled with warmth. This scene fell into Miao Yixiong's eyes and he felt that something wasn't right. Love worm really had no effect on Dmo Xian? But why did he feel that? Dmo Xian's imposing manner wasn't as terrifying as before he fainted? Not right. If Dmo Xian was really affected by the love worm, then he would definitely be affected by Miao Rongrong, who had implanted the centrifugal worm into Dmo Xian. Looking at the atmosphere between Dmo Xian and Yiqing Luo. Chapter 2639. The Ancestors' Forbidden Technique. It had no effect on Dmo Xian. Miao Yixiong's eyes changed as it shone with an unknown glint. He looked at the young lady who was walking towards him step by step, and looked at Dmo Xian who was standing by the side. His gaze was fixed on the young lady. He took a deep breath. Dmo Xian had no intention to make a move. To him, this was a chance to live. As long as he could restrain Yi Luo, he would have the chance to leave this place. "Leader Miao, since you like goo worms so much, why not let these goo worms accompany you to play?" Yiqing Luo smiled sweetly, but her voice was indifferent while her gaze was icy cold. Miao Yixiong was still puzzled about the meaning of Yiqing Luo's words. He saw Yiqing Luo lowered her head and took a look at that huge goo worm. "Goo King, I'll have to trouble you." The eerie green light on the carapace of the goo worm that was about the size of 2 palms flickered. In the goo array, those goo worms which were escaping immediately stopped. Following that, they swarmed towards Miao Yixiong's direction. The speed of the goo worms was very slow. Tens of thousands of them formed a black hurricane as it charged towards Miao Yixiong. Miao Yixiong stared at Yiqing Luo in disbelief. His reaction was swift as he tried to control these goo worms. But at the next moment, those goo worms completely swallowed him up. Miao Yixiong's entire body was covered with scratches from Qi. Many parts of his body were badly mutilated and his white bones could be seen. This made it easier for these goo worms to burrow into Miao Yixiong's body. Miao Yixiong didn't even have the energy to resist. He was drowned by thousands of goo worms. Miao Yixiong's body was covered by a dense assortment of goo worms. The scene was extremely disgusting and horrifying. Yiqing Luo's expression changed slightly, but there wasn't a single ripple in her eyes. Her lips curled up slightly as she gave an evil smile. "Leader Miao, don't struggle and don't cry out. I said I won't take your life and I will absolutely not let you die." Her voice was light and ethereal, making one feel an inexplicable chill. Miao Rongrong, who was sprawled on the ground, was so shocked that she wanted to escape. But she couldn't control that broken body at all. Bam! Before he could stand up, he fell heavily to the ground. The noise created by Miao Rongrong also made Yiqing Luo shift her gaze onto her. Miao Rongrong shuddered, her crazed eyes were filled with fear towards Yiqing Luo. This was a fear that came from the bottom of his heart. He did not hide it at all. "Don't be anxious, it's your turn now." Yiqing Luo smiled as she took slow steps towards Miao Rongrong. Looking at Miao Rongrong's ferocious and frightened expression, she laughed again. "Scared? Why weren't you afraid when you poisoned Xian?" "I'm wrong. I'm wrong. Forgive me, please forgive me. Forgive me." Miao Rongrong was so scared that she no longer had the slightest bit of infatuation towards Dmo Xian. Miao Rongrong's only thought now was to survive. Although Yiqing Luo had said that she would spare her and Miao Yixiong's lives. But looking at Miao Yixiong, who was covered by so many goo worms, he could not help but sigh. She was a goo master, how could she not understand? How could Miao Yixiong, who had been swallowed by a parasite, still be alive? Even if he was alive, that was just a parasite's puppet. It's not impossible to let you go, after all. You who have lost both your hands, can't affect me at all. Yiqing Luo bent down slightly as she looked at Miao Rongrong with a smile. Tell me, the cure for the love parasite and centrifugal parasite. Chapter 2640. You don't know? Yiqing Luo's long and narrow eyes narrowed dangerously. Miao Rongrong trembled in fear and shook her head desperately. I really don't know. That's the ancestors' forbidden spell. Ordinary Gu masters like us have no way of knowing the solution to forbidden Gu arts. I only took the heart separation Gu when father wasn't paying attention. But I really don't know how to cure the poison. She cried and kept moving backwards. Dragging the blood all over the ground, Zhang Xian looked extremely filthy. There was not a single trace of the domineering aura he had before. Yiqing Luo pursed her lips as she fixed her gaze on Miao Rongrong for some time. He could more or less confirm that Miao Rongrong did not know the solution to the love Gu and centrifugal Gu. Her gaze landed on Miao Yixiong, who was struggling under the cover of the Gu worms. Lass, I'm afraid. Miao Yixiong doesn't know how to cure the forbidden Gu. Ever since the ancestors of the Miao tribe sealed the black tortoise, the ancestors of the Miao tribe brought all the forbidden Gu techniques into the tomb. Old Man Sung's voice resounded in his mind. My guess is that Miao Yixiong went directly to the Miao tribe's tomb and took away the love Gu and the separation Gu from the Miao tribe's ancestor's coffin. As for the cure, unless the Miao tribe's ancestor revives, it's impossible that the Miao ancestors didn't leave behind the cure. Yiqing Luo's fingers tightened. Since there's no way to dig it out from this father and daughter pair, I'll search the entire Miao tribe. These two types of Gu poison were obviously of the opposite attribute. No matter how strong Dmo Xian was. No matter how strong his body was. It was invaded by these two Gu at the same time. To some extent, it would still affect his body. She must think of a way to remove the two types of venom in Dmo Xian's body. Yiqing Luo was deep in thought as she conversed with Old Man Song. Suddenly, he sensed a sharp gust of wind coming at him. Yiqing Luo swiftly retreated and flipped her palm. Profound chi burst forth and turned into a sharp blade. Ah! A blood-curdling scream was heard, followed by the sound of a heavy object falling to the ground. Miao Rongrong's body rolled several times on the ground. Fresh blood dyed the ground red. Miao Rongrong bumped into the corner of the wall and coughed non-stop. Her face was covered in blood, and her expression could no longer be seen clearly. He could only vaguely see her twisted and hideous facial features. If you don't let me go, I'll kill you. She howled hoarsely, as her pair of malevolent eyes stared at Yiqing Luo. As though she knew that no matter what, Yiqing Luo would not let her off, so she might as well go all out. However, Yiqing Luo laughed lightly. Just based on your current look and you want to kill me? Miao Rongrong had lost both her hands. Even his most proficient Gu technique could not be used on her. Miao Rongrong still wanted to kill her. I can even perish together with you. Perish together with you. Miao Rongrong at this moment seemed to have returned back to her previous state, when she was infatuated with Dmo Xian, and her abnormal mental state. Her lips moved quickly. He muttered the words perish together. He looked like he was possessed. Yiqing Luo's slender brows creased slightly as she looked at Miao Rongrong, who was trying her best to shift her back, leaning against the wall, smiling sinisterly in an attempt to stand up, but repeatedly falling onto the ground. Suddenly, she seemed to have thought of something. Her eyes immediately dimmed as her slender brows knitted tightly, as she stared straight into Miao Rongrong's bewitched eyes. Her pupils shook and her feet changed as she speedily moved towards Miao Rongrong's direction. Miao Rongrong was just preparing to operate her profound jade heart, attempting to use it to self-destruct, exploding the entire bedroom. Chapter 2641. Miao Rongrong wanted to avoid it, but Yiqing Luo's hand had already grabbed her long hair, which was soaked in blood. Hiss! Miao Rongrong gasped in pain. Her pupils became clearer because of this burst of pain. Oh, I didn't expect there to be a new discovery. Yiqing Luo sneered as she pulled Miao Rongrong's head towards her. She had no intention of showing mercy to the fairer sex. Let me go. Miao Rongrong was in so much pain that her scalp was about to be pulled off. Yiqing Luo ignored Miao Rongrong's scream. She pulled her head closer to herself. His eyes were fixed on Miao Rongrong's pupils without blinking. The more Miao Rongrong struggled, the tighter her scalp was pulled. In the end, Miao Rongrong was in so much pain that she had no energy to struggle. About the time it took to burn half an incense stick. Yiqing Luo suddenly stretched out her hand and quickly poked Miao Rongrong's eyes. Miao Rongrong screamed in shock and quickly closed her eyes. The intense pain that he had imagined did not come. Miao Rongrong's heart was so scared that it almost jumped out from her throat. The young lady's icy cold voice rang in her ears, "Open your eyes." Miao Rongrong's eyelashes fluttered and instinctively opened her eyes under Yiqing Luo's coercion. In front of her was the young lady's slender fair fingers. It was sparkling and translucent like jade, and glowing with a moist luster. At this moment, Miao Rongrong's consciousness was unprecedentedly clear. She quickly tried to move backward to avoid the attack. But her hair was tightly held in Yiqing Luo's hand. She wanted to escape. The pulling of her scalp brought about a sharp pain. Miao Rongrong's breathing became hurried as fear magnified in her heart. His pupils also unconsciously widened a little. Suddenly, Miao Rongrong felt a stinging pain in her eyes. But Yiqing Luo's fingers did not touch her eyes at all, not allowing Miao Rongrong to think carefully. The pain in her eyes became more and more obvious. It was as though something was swelling in her eyes. As if something was about to explode. "Move again and I will dig out your eyes." A cold voice floated down from above. Miao Rongrong was in so much pain that she was trembling and sweating profusely. "What are you going to do?" Yiqing Luo didn't answer her. Yiqing Luo squinted her eyes slightly. Her fingers were just a little distance away from Miao Rongrong's opened eyes. If her hand trembled for even a moment, it would definitely stab Miao Rongrong in the eye. Very quickly, Yiqing Luo's fingertip, which was placed on Miao Rongrong's eyes, appeared a black line. It was extremely thin. It was like a strand of hair. If one didn't look closely, they wouldn't be able to tell. That black thread, after being pinched by Yiqing Luo's fingertips, seemed to have a life of its own as it tried to escape. But Yiqing Luo grabbed it tightly. Back when Miao Rongrong was obsessed with Dmo Xian, Yiqing Luo discovered a faintly discernible black line in Miao Rongrong's eyes. This was the thing that controlled Miao Rongrong. It was the thing that caused Miao Rongrong to repeatedly lose control and become crazy. Yiqing Luo recalled that Miao Yixiong's palm strike on her earlier, which revealed the dark force's presence. This black thread. It was similar to the mysterious Yin energy. But this black thread was obviously much more brilliant than the mysterious Yin energy. At least, she could immediately discover the mysterious Yin energy and expel it. And this black thread, if it wasn't for her sharp observation, she wouldn't be able to detect it at all. After grabbing that black thread, you're tuning into the Journey of the Soul YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.